Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be moving on with the next session for the day. And this discussion will be on directing policy interventions for value-added manufacturing, scheme for components and modules, one size does not fit all. And now to our panelists for this session, we already have Mr. N. Ramachandran, the past President, Elsina and MD, Mel Systems and Services on stage. Sir, I want you to please stay back on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he has more than 45 years of experience in the electronics industry in various capacities. He is now the Managing Director of Mel Systems and Services Limited, a company engaged in automation and control defense electronics and automatic test equipment. He is also active in the industry bodies like CII and Elsina. Welcome, sir. Please be seated. I'd like to welcome our next panelist, Mr. Sudhir Narayan, the partner at Bain & Co. from Mumbai office. He is the leader in technology practices specializing in semiconductors and electronics, ER&D, and Industry 4.0 and software. Over the past 20 years, Mr. Sudhir has advised clients who are leaders across a variety of sectors, including semiconductors and electronics, ER&D, and digital engineering services and telecom, over areas of new market entry, growth strategy, supplier development, performance improvement and capability sourcing. He is also the co-author of Bain's Global ER&D report and co-authored a report with Microsoft on the adoption of AI in India. Let's hear it up with a round of applause and welcome him. Welcome, sir. Our next panelist is Mr. Rajiv Venkatraman, Managing Director, Precision Electronics Components Manufacturing Company. He's a second-generation entrepreneur, engineering driving the growth of PEC in the highly competitive electronics components segment. PEC today is the leader in the field of precision wire-wound resistors in India. And today they export over 60% of its production to customers in over 20 different countries, including USA, Germany, UK, and China. PEC works closely with customers from design to production and offer the best in value in its field. Welcome, sir. And I'd also like to welcome on stage Mr. Raju Goyal, the Secretary General, Elsina, with a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, over to you, gentlemen.
Is this working? Okay, good. Okay, the toughest session, I think, which is not the post-lunch session, it's just the session before lunch. Yeah, so we are between you and food. Let's try to keep this as interesting and relevant as possible. Thanks a lot to Mr. Ramachandran, Rajiv, and Mr. Goyal for joining me today. I think the context given to us was all of us have unanimously said this is an opportunity-laden environment. Everyone is bullish about India's prospects, how things have changed over the last 4-5 years from difficult business cases to what's the next future, how does 15th Source India look like, etc. And a lot of this is possible because of, I think, the government push as well. I think we are, in addition to a vibrant and ambitious industry, have a friendly and a right-thinking government, which has made a set of relevant moves, which adds to the positivity and optimism that every one of us feel here. I think what we will look to cover in the panel discussion today is what are aspects that government and industry should think about as they come together to discuss the next round of policy interventions specifically targeted towards components. And with that, Yogesh, if I can just use a few pages to share some data points on framing the discussion for today, and then we'll open up with the panelists' inputs. I'll not sort of drain all the information. I think this is covered by many of the speakers through the day. We have seen India as a consumption market growing robust in electronics. It's been growing 15% year on year over the last 3-4 years. It will continue to be so. We are still at a 1/4 of a per capita electronics consumption. Out of the 155 billion that we consume in terms of electronics, The good news is, over the last few years, we have grown the ecosystem in the final device manufacturing and assembly, and with the likes of Dixon, etc., playing a prominent role. About 100 billion of electronics is manufactured in India, but still that is only scratching the surface. And the reason why I say so is this slide. Electronics, by definition, is a global market. And which is why the topic of the 2 days is also electronics industry and global value chain. If you look at the global trade, it's about a $3 trillion trade. And countries like Vietnam, which is 1/5 or 1/6 our GDP size, exports about 135 billion of electronics. And we are exporting about 20 billion of electronics. So they are 1/6 our size, we are exporting 1/6 their export volume. So the headroom for growth is just massive. So when we talk about electronics, it's not just about domestic consumption market, it's the global market fundamentally, which is at least 15, 20 times the opportunity size of what India provides. As someone from the earlier panel mentioned, we are uniquely positioned as both a consumption market and a production market. So that's an advantage that we should leverage while thinking about it. Over the last few years, and it's not just the last 2-3 years, I think the government has been thinking about ESDM as a sector over the last decade or so. There have been a range of initiatives, right from modified CHIPS policy, specs, the range of PLI schemes, and the semiconductor scheme. But one thing to notice in here is that while different policies have had different levels of success and traction, it's been mostly successful in the assembly or the device space. And if you look through the details, I think the design is was targeted towards that. I think now is the time to sort of think of the next set of policy interventions which are towards components as a space and sub-assemblies as a space, which will deepen the ecosystem. I had a couple of charts, and I am happy for Elsina to share with anyone who's interested, which breaks down the different component families. And the reason why I bring this is components is not one homogeneous one segment. It's actually 30 sub-segments, 30 sub-industries, and by 30 it doesn't get into small spaces. The space is so large that each segment is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity by itself, if thought of it independently, right? So just to give an example, mobile phones, which is the largest manufacturing segment in India, about $50 billion, has massive PCB consumption into it, massive passives and electromechanicals consumption into it. Just the mobile phones which are consumed in India or manufactured in India, the PCBs which goes into it is a $10 billion of value. And then $10 billion is 60,000 crores, or maybe I'm wrong and very dated in my conversion, 80,000 crores, right? So 80,000 crores of PCB worth is imported into India for assembling for domestic consumption purpose. That's the scale of opportunity that we are talking about, and that's one small gray box in the bottom left on this chart. So that's the vastness or the size of the opportunity that we are talking about, and it's a family of categories. And what the other aspect that we need to look at is India currently produces about $15 to $20 billion of worth components, about $10 billion worth components, out of which $5-6 billion gets exported and $5-6 billion gets consumed locally in manufacturing. So there are a set of components where we have capability, right? We have a $5 billion ecosystem with the likes of Rajiv's company or Mr. Ramchandran's company contributing to it, which is component category A. And I would broadly classify it as categories which are non-surface mount devices, friendly, discretes, passives of that form factor and performance criteria. There is a set of SMD grade passives in component category B, where we don't have the technology today. If I have to get into very thin film ceramic capacitors or very small form factor discretes and antennas and sensors, these are capabilities. Even if we want to scale, we need technology partners from globally, which also comes under policy elements. And the third category is actives, right? So wanted to maybe getting a bit too technical for the discussion here, but important aspect in terms of places where we have a starting point, where we need to drive for scale, places where we need a technology partner to drive a starting point, and the third one, actives, which is being driven by the semiconductor policy independently, which we can park aside for the conversation for today. And just wanted to leave just the scale of, as I said, each box here is a market by itself, low-tech passives, PCBs, antennas, electronic components. The global market size is, as per our estimate, everything is in tens of billions of dollars. I think the opportunity for both entrepreneurs, industry, business houses, and the government is to think of, if I think of automotive an example, right? Automotive in India will be a 50 or a $60 billion industry by itself, standalone, which is one product category in this space. So one thing, Mr. Goel, I would strongly encourage MeitY to have sub-departments which are product component family wise, because they need to, it's worth their investment time to think of each of those opportunity spaces at that level of depth, right? So with that, I'll maybe open up for conversation and leave this slide for discussion purposes on different policy levers. Maybe I'll start with Mr. Rajiv and Mr. Ramachandran. Your thoughts on, maybe I laid out the component families into multiple levels. How do you see it? One size doesn't fit all is the place where we are starting with. As a entrepreneur who has been in this space for multiple decades, how would you classify it? What is what are your perspectives?
Thank you. What you have classified and broken down is absolutely in the right direction. Components, as we know, is a very large space where there are multiple types of components. And they can be classified in the general category the way you have split it up. But what we have understood from working with the global market for all these years is that in every category there are multiple subspecialties. The global market tends to take a component and go deeper and deeper into it. They subclassify it, they create verticals which are specialized for every industry, every application, and that's where the complexity grows exponentially. So every category which you are given can be broken down into probably another 100 subcategories, and each subcategory will have a specialist supplier in some part of the globe catering to that requirement. And the complexity of the industry grows exponentially from this, and breaking into every area and every application requires people who are who understand the application, who understand the product, who understand the manufacturing processes. So these are things which we have to understand about the global market and have the policies which will be required to support each and every component at some point, globally cluster them the way you have done it and look at how we can scale these things up. So definitely it requires a subcategorization, it requires the government to address it, and with the market size which we are talking about, I think having a sub-department at the government level looking into components and supporting components is the key to driving this industry forward. As the Secretary yesterday very clearly identified, value addition is in components. And to go up the value chain, to deepen the industry in India, we have to go into the component nitty-gritties and look at how we are going to support it at the component level. So I'll stop at this and let Mr. Ramachandran give his views.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult area for, I think, even the government, because it's very easy to understand a cell phone or a television set up some policies. And but then when you talk about components, you go into components, go into materials. Then you start going deeper and deeper, and so it's quite tough for policymakers to kind of understand and address. That's one point. Second point is, look at the industry side. there is always a, unique needs at every level in terms of commercial conditions as well. Now, EMS or an equipment maker would love to have zero duty. Now, the component guy will want some protection, and obviously the material guy will want more protection. So imagine the government that they have to kind of listen to all these guys. We are saying within components there are so many kind of classifications, and then they have to look at that and look at the individual needs. So I think I sympathize with the government in terms of looking at all these. They need AI to probably look at, to arrive at some policies, but it's very complex. The other point is, as you indicated, in terms of as you go deeper into components, you need technology. You need unique materials which may not be available in India, and you'll probably eventually, continuously have to import. So that access is becoming that'll be a problem. So how do you obtain technology? Some areas you may or may not, people may or may not part with technology. Equipment assembly is okay. I think, it's not as difficult as making component and making materials. So this is I think this whole subject is a long-term subject for both the industry and the government. I don't think overnight we'll be in a position to, we waited 70 years, maybe it'll take another 10, 15 years before we become stronger in our supply chain. We must have the patience, the money, and the, how do you convert that? Component business, the margins are always small. So how do you encourage people to invest large sums of money in an industry which has a small margin? And component business, it involves a lot of different technologies. Electronic assembly is kind of as simpler, but in component you might have to have knowledge on materials, chemistry, metallurgy. I don't know, all kinds of technologies will play in. So how then the question of skilling, and when you do the skilling, how do you see the bigger picture? It's a very challenging environment. So I would say that both the industry and the government should sit together. I mean, you're doing the exercise and look at as Rajiv was saying, look at a 25-year horizon. Obviously, you can't plan for 25 years because in another 10 years, as you were saying, the components may change. But still look at a long-term horizon in terms of how we want to shape this industry and what level. In fact, yesterday the secretary made a very good point. Their target is to ensure that we have 40% value addition. He's not talking about we'll have 100% value addition. So I guess it can never be done. So how do we push from 10% to 40%? And there you had the point you made it very relevant, that is what kind of technologies are already available, and with academia, IITs and all that, what can be easily managed. Put a lot of efforts and money into those areas first, while you also scout around for the others where we don't have the technology. And that's the way I think it can be taken up. Thank you.
Rajuji, any points, thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I have some slightly strong opinion on this, because I've been watching that things are not moving even after so many years. See, one thing is that I think we should keep things simple. Sometimes I feel is that when I look at the different types of components, and I learn from my members. I'm not in the industry myself, but I find that we can really scale up on things like mechanics and electromechanicals easily, because they don't need so much technology. Then we already have that, so they need money. right? Money is, I think, by far the easiest to get. I would think so. It would be, though. I mean, it's not easy that way. That banks don't give you money easily, but still, it may be the resource which is kind of the flexibility is large. So I think these are the areas where we can, and we already have 30 to 40% of our local demand being met. So there are skills available. There are entrepreneurs available. The next I would say are the through hole passives, where also what PEC is making resistors and capacitors, where we can really scale up. They are very, very competitive, no doubt, but still I think the scale up is possible. PCBs, I say, is very, very important, but it needs very high capital infusion. So, and there are issues which relate to the raw materials not being available, etc. So I think considering these things, if you look at the matrix that we are trying to prepare right now, I think it would be best if we look at mechanicals and electromechanicals. I mean, we are talking about scaling, right? Just something which is kind of an anomaly is that we are talking about increasing the export and manufacturing of mobiles by 30, 40, 50% every year. So where is that happening from? Because because we are not sourcing any components locally. So we are doing it, but it is still, we are still, I would say, only on the periphery. So we need to get deeper. I mean, not taking away anything from the assembly part or from EMS, but without the components, this thing is going to continue. So those are my comments on that.
Thank you. I think points well made on both thinking about this in a very bespoke manner by different component families, keeping things simple, identifying low-hanging areas and acting on that quickly, and the fact that EMS is successful creates that local market, right? Otherwise, components, everything would have been. I was talking to a few of the attendees today. I think the situation few years ago was very different. The market was not there, right? So you were mentioning when India signed the WTO many years back, it was ignored as a small market overall, right? So I think with that, I think I'll move to the policies which are underway, and just sort of sharing with the audience. The PLI scheme is structured broadly as a sort of a payback, and many of you would know, of 4 to 6% of revenue on reaching specific revenue targets and meeting specific investment targets. Many of the applications have been at the assembly stage. It covers components from a drafting of the policy itself, but many of the entrepreneurs have not opted in because the investment to revenue ratios or the revenue targets are not in line with the economics of the component folks, right? Now, with that context, I wanted to maybe share, ask the questions on saying how would you think of, and we spoke about two areas, one where production exists and scale is important, and second is areas where it's higher technology, higher capex. Any thoughts on policy suggestions or policy interventions or forms of policy that would be helpful for bringing that objective, right? Both scale and incubation of those capabilities. Maybe I'll start with you, Mr. Ramchandra.
As Raju was also saying, you said low-hanging fruits. Like, for example, you said a PCB, $10 billion PCB market is available, right? I think today, semiconductors government has realized that that's something we need, and they're willing to bet $10 billion on it, right? But then PCB is used everywhere, and it's a technology which is kind of available locally. Why can't the government have a policy which is somewhat similar to the semicon policy, saying, just take that product and say that I'll provide you, they're saying 50%, state government brings in another 25%, and so 75% will be subsidized. Then there'll be a PLI because the margins on that is pretty low Because in any case, when you make PCB, you will import initially for a few years your laminates and other materials. So you need that support. So you say, you guys recommend to the government saying between the center and the state it has to be 75% capital subsidy and a PLI of at least 6 to 8%, right? And then they guarantee the unit that, we will not harass you on pollution. We work with them but not harass you. Maybe you will get a lot of, you're saying your $10 billion will come in. Because it's a technology, there are 100 people who make PCBs today in India. They don't want to scale up because, the market, the margins. And I tell you, 50% of them would like to shut down because of the pollution control problems. I think the government should intervene and say, okay, you do this and we'll leave you in peace. It happened in Tirupur in Tamil Nadu. The textile units had a problem. Government said, we'll shut you down. But government worked with them, funded partly, and they set up a pollution control unit. It's peaceful, things are running well. So I think things like that, maybe a cluster. Yesterday we were very happy to note that, Gwalior, they're building a cluster. Maybe that's the solution for that. So build that and help them. But CapEx subsidy has to be something extraordinary, like what they're doing for semicon. Yeah. So you pick one or two such industries.
Big, bold allocations with respect, in line with ambition.
You see that, in any product you make today, PCB will be 20% of the cost.
Yeah.
So that solves one major issue then. Then you look at other, of course, I am saying that along with it, existing components must be supported. But we don't know. Yesterday we discussed about chip components, saying where do you get the technology. In fact, Vinod was saying that how do you bring Murata in? That may be a little bit long way off, but we can do all this where we have the technology. And as Raju said, mechanical, all that's all locally doable. Now we have Amphenol is a 3,000 crore company now. They're quite big, and there are many connector companies now.
Yeah.
And enclosure is all locally made. So I think government should pick this one or two of this and go after supporting it fully.
Yeah. One follow-up question, sir. If you look at the China market, there would be 50, hundreds of companies which are $1 billion plus just in the electronic component space. If I wear the hat of the government, are entrepreneurs ready to think of that scale?
It's because of this, when as I mentioned, when ITA came in, our industry was not big, it was fragmented. Maybe I didn't say that, maybe I said that yesterday. At that time there was a funny rule that large companies could not be in components. That was a disastrous policy which led to all small companies. The small companies did not have the wherewithal to invest on a global scale. That lingered on. So, and component manufacturing is complex. So even now the big groups will want to make end products. That's a lot easier. And so to change the mindset of people, government has to do some, exercise, work with them. It may not be overnight, but for example, they start with PCB and give all the support. I'm sure mindset of industry, see at the end of the day, industry is out to make money. Chinese guys did not do it for free, right? The Chinese business did for making profits. The other point is that in India, we never had the mentality of building global scale. Maybe Reliance and Adani maybe are doing it now, but otherwise, generally we have always addressed domestic market, even though it was small. So I think that thing has to change. There's a lot of dialogue needs to be done, but at least if the government shows an example. See, again, fab, in my opinion, not an example. It is needed, government should support it, but that's a very complex industry which people are going to say, okay, that's something very different. But normally what people are familiar with, PCB or any of these things, if the government say, I'll bet on it, I'll help you do this and show this, a lot of people will come in.
Yeah. Ajit?
Yeah, there are many points to consider in this, but let me go back to what we were talking in terms of the government interventions which came earlier with the PLI scheme and the SPEC scheme. When we saw the original PLI schemes, the moment the component companies saw it, we said this is not going to work for component companies. With a turnover ratio, capital turnover ratio of 6, it was just not possible. So we in component industry look at a capital to turnover ratio of say 1:1, maybe if you are lucky 1:2 or slightly better than that. But in some cases with complicated components can be even 1:0.75. So when so we definitely need the government to relook at the policies, look at what is the kind of investment required to scale up production. The point that companies in India do not want to create global scale, that needs to be understood a little bit more. Global scale will come with, and the big problem with global scale is how will you sell the product which you manufacture. The global market is growing at a certain level, and the companies are already established capacities in various parts of the world, and there is no, with ITA agreement, there's no problem in selling anywhere. So you have to compete and displace somebody else in a particular market. So you are competing against global players with already depreciated plants. So the only way you can do that is by having sufficient support to establish new facilities, to take the risk for going ahead and setting up the facility before, and to supply later. So the policies have to be tuned to support the industries in that manner. So without that, creating global capacities is going to be very difficult. So this is one of the key points which the government needs to address to take the component industry forward, in my view.
I would just say that, I mean, I'll answer your second question in 2 lines, that I think, there should be a business case. If there is a business case, I mean, if you look at Dixon, they have grown from, a few hundred crores to now possibly 18,000 crores. So they have done it, so they have made a business case out of it. And they make a very decent ROI, that's why, the markets are also, rewarding them for it. So in the case of components, I think, we need some help in the in the investment and also that that they can cover up, and they can. I'm sure that the Indian entrepreneurs would do it. Yes.
Yeah. I think if you talk to anyone from Dixon, they are very interested in the component ecosystem coming up, because it's important for them to. It's part of their business case to get into the next phase of growth, right? So it's encouraging. Maybe moving to the next topic, sir. We spoke about this scale part of it, where operations exist today. There is a second category, which is maybe we should start work now, it will give results a few years later. The first category is the low-hanging fruit, where you have dependency on working with global partners to learn the technology or establish joint ventures, find ways in which you can acquire small entities or small IPs along with it. Tech transfer becomes important, right? So what is your, from your experience, what role can the government play to facilitate that for entrepreneurs who are interested in those spaces, let's say complex pen sensors or complex PCBs and so on?
Yeah, I think technology transfer or availability is also it's a game, it's not easy to decide. But as we discussed in your first trench of components, technology may be available. Maybe at more complex products it may not be available. Like PCB, I'm sure technology is available. It's a question of, I guess in India so far on the PCB the problem was investments and stuff and the margins. So in terms of technology transfer, if the government looks at your first block and say that you guys find technology, we will support you on CapEx, and we will also talk to those governments to ensure that they are nudged. That's possible, definitely. Technology is available in those products. But, I'm repeating myself, as Vinod said yesterday, if you want technology from Morata to make this product, may or may not be available. So I think it's a question of looking at the areas where it's possible. See, there may be partially available technology in India, then fill it up with getting technology from overseas. Definitely that's possible. The other aspects is government should again pick some technologies and let Indian labs and IITs and things to work with. I mean, today they are investing so much money in material technology and stuff in IITs and other labs without a commercial goal. I mean, I think that should change now. Like a government is now, trying to redo the DRDO primarily because they feel that they want to find an end. Likewise, if they do that, I think the other aspect of it, where technology is not available, parallelly government should look at developing those technologies, some with investments. And, we are saying that 25% of global semicon executives are of Indian origin, right? I'm sure in material technology, similar people will be available. So invite them, give them a good environment to work. There are multiple ways. I think just go and acquiring technology where they are not willing is not the solution. There are multiple ways of tackling this. I think it should be, maybe government should set up a department for technology acquisition and do all, not they are acquiring, but look at the scene and what are the different ways and enable that to happen maybe. But I think it's time that we develop many of these technologies locally, but industry may not be able to today invest. They'll neither have the technology background or thing, but we have all IITs and we have CSIR, DRDO labs. We are spending billions. And I'm sure things can be done.
Yeah, I have completely similar ideas as Mr. Ramchandran has said. We need to take two levers here. One is that we have to figure out a way to get the technology into India, process by process. We look at the critical processes which are required in many of the component industries, establish centers like tool room centers, where the production technology can be brought in, can be taught to people, can be developed further. Familiarity with the process is very critical. Equipment typically is extremely expensive. So if you're not familiar with it, investing in it and in creating a process around it becomes very difficult. So if we had centers like a tool room center where these technologies are available and then you can go and work with them, entrepreneurs can go and understand them, understand how they all work, and then pull them together into the configuration required for making your component, that will create a whole range of new entrepreneurs in the country. And today, from the size of the industry which is there, which is present, the size of the opportunity, thousands of entrepreneurs are required to come into this industry, come up, develop the capability, create the bandwidth required for scaling up, and grow into larger companies. We look at it as a 10, 15, 20-year project, but we have to seed it with the right technologies. It's not necessary that these technologies are complicated, but the problem of not having access to the equipment, not knowing what processes will work, and that being available very far away from here is a real barrier for development of the industry. So one is we create centers of excellence where production technology is exposed to people, and then other is that where the entire technology is available, government should have a program by which it can support purchase of technologies and then using that to scale up further. So these are the two levers that can be used to get technology transfer. As we know earlier, there were barriers to entry in a country like China. China said that unless you bring technology and transfer it, we will not allow you into the country. Now, with the globally open atmosphere, such a thing cannot happen. So we've got to be really creative to find new ways in which technology can come into the country. But it's absolutely essential that we do it.
No, thanks for those. I think interesting ideas apart from just partnering and acquiring technology, co-developing it and different legs of solving that. The last topic for which I had from my side before I open up for audience questions is all the other enabling inputs, right? You made an interesting point of the senior high-tech talent, 25% of semiconductor, and we thought of brain drain, maybe it's now we need to tap into that pool of highly trained talent. But I'll come to the other part of the skilling, right? What is your view of readiness of the operational talent available in India, raw materials or equipments, right? So when we talk about any of these need to go hand in hand. It's even if assume we have the policy support from the government, what is your point of view on readiness, or would we be discussing 12 months down the line the next Source India on how to solve for raw material and equipment now that component policy is in place? So is there any point of view on those three inputs?
I'll take one by one. Raw materials, for example. I'm sure there are a number of people who are involved in material processing which can be used in components, but it's probably, components are not made, so how will raw material be used? Like I know for a fact that Carborundum here, they have a lot of, they do a lot of R&D in ceramics. They can provide, in fact they export some ceramic material for semicon companies globally. So it's a question of the market which will determine how your material guys will invest and find. I guess partially it's so in the equipment as well. If the production comes in, equipment guys will start developing those. Only thing is what happens, one of the reasons we are also in the capital equipment business. One thing we find is that cost of money in India is high, so the industry would love to simply go for the lowest cost, and that lowest cost is almost all nowadays in China. So and the Chinese, the cost differential in our experience is extremely high. There was one instance where we were bidding for a visual inspection equipment, and the Chinese price, selling price was equivalent to just one camera which we were trying to use. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. So what do we require? We need some government understanding here. If you want to, anyway, afternoon there is a session on capital equipment. I don't want to steal the thunder, but the point is, in my opinion, in India, the jugaad is a word which must be banished from our dictionary. I think we are willing to make high-tech products with some rudimentary equipment and concepts. I think that should change. Investment in CapEx is one time, but the quality of the product is lifetime. So you need to really ensure that you invest in the right kind of equipment which will help you to produce the product long term. In my opinion, a lot of our industries need to do soul searching in this and look at investing in, then the equipment industry will improve. See, today everybody wants to import, then where is the incentive for a local guy to make an equipment? It's a chicken and egg. I think it has to flow one from the other.
Current market doesn't exist. Support is required for those legs as well.
Once that market emerges, government should start supporting the capital good industry, saying that no, hey, you guys have to, get this locally made, and then the material similar. So once you start doing that, then the material technology. In my opinion, in these areas, enough technology is available, but then it's a question of the market and how. I must say, amazing Chinese how they've done it. In fact, for example, the new industry of EV, battery manufacture. You should see the kind of equipment the Chinese rig up. It's unbelievable. So, but that's because the market is so big. So somebody spends time, you know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and egg when it comes to capital goods. I think the sequence is that you need to get the assembly processes going in the country. You create demand for components, then let the component industry develop and scale and grow. That will drive the demand for equipment, which is going into making components, going into making assembly. So as the demand is created, then the assembly industry can grow. Or else the only other way the capital equipment industry can grow is they start looking at global requirements and start working with that. But it's extremely difficult to develop equipment very far away from the customer. So you need to have the demand locally and then create products which will meet that demand and then go and sell it globally. So it's a really difficult problem to crack at the moment. So I would say get the component industry to scale up. Automatically the demand will be created and that pull will create a huge demand for equipment because nobody wants to import equipment at expensive prices. If somebody is able to do a reasonable job here with local support. Today, whatever equipment is coming from abroad. The support is sketchy, especially at the component level. Maybe at the assembly level, people have started coming in because of the number of SMT lines available in the country. So support is coming, but that's not the same for component level. So yeah, so I think as a sequence it will happen and we should wait for that to happen.
I would like to say something.
Please,
about
please.
it, though earlier I thought I would not. But number one, I would like to, ask Mr. Ramchandran sir, if you banish Jugaad from this country, what would be the technology left with us? I think that is, I'm saying that is the only technology that we have. But anyway,
I
that is on a
disagree
lighter note.
because we have technology, but we go to Jugaad because we want to save money. See, today, our attitude towards even labor has to change. See, today in India, I don't know, 70% of the labor is all temporary. I mean, and then we pay very low wages. Is that the society we want to create in terms of riding on very low-cost labor whose living conditions are not very good? That's not the society we want to create, right? We want to really pay them well and give them jobs which are of satisfying their needs as well as their thought process. And that's possible only if you have modern production methods and the processes through which you can give them, jobs which are satisfying and the money which is... See, today China has reached that, almost reached that stage, where they don't have manual jobs anymore. They have automated, but then they still employ the millions of people who are there, and they pay them better, and still they are competitive. I think our whole attitude has to change in terms of our approach to how we look at, our people, our industry, and quality levels. Jugaad leads to quality levels which are not consistent. So why would... See, today, I must say that, the entry of multinationals in India and electronic manufacturing has really lifted our, quality thought process to a different level. I mean, that's the kind of level we want to compete with and think of. Otherwise, we have the technology, it's not that, but we don't want to invest in that technology.
Right. No, I mean, I was not so serious about it. I mean, I know that what you meant by what you were saying, and but I would like to say something else, sir. Sir, I think, sir, we are in a time warp. We have not had a consistent, development path in our country. We had 200 years of, rule by the British. And I think that has kind of, not kept. Otherwise, typically I would say that, development of the raw materials or the, if you talk about the Industrial Revolution, right? All these things, should have happened, in consonance with each other. So what happened that we became an importing society. And we did not have any development of, modern technology for a certain period of time. While in our ancient scriptures, if you see, we had, the top scientists of the world lived in India 1,000 years ago. So I mean, that is something which has not. So this is something, so we have not given that much importance to it. Now we are trying to catch up. We are also trying to live with the politics of the country. So I mean, all those issues are there. So I mean, I'm saying that we definitely need the raw materials. So you won't believe it. I'll just make a statement here. In our MSIPs and specs policies, our raw materials are not covered. When somebody is saying that they want to make, in fact, in the case of capacitors, somebody said that they would like to make the film also. They said no, if film you cannot cover in this. Now, if you don't make film, how do you make a capacitor? So I mean, a very simple example. So we need to be, we are a little cussed about our policies and how we implement them. So that is my only comment here. I have nothing for or against Jugaad or modern technology. That was
No, Raju, the point is that, listen, that the knowledge and technology is available. Maybe the way we handle it, the way the bureaucracy may be, their understanding may be an issue. But look at today startups and youngsters. I mean, listen, we have spent 25 years working with defense. Our mood is like what you're saying, very defensive. We think it's very difficult. It's impossible to do that business. But today, youngsters, 4 or 5 years, they get orders, they get, technology they induct. They're doing extremely well. Really hats off to them. Today, we have young people with the right kind of mental makeup and they can make a change. And people at our age should let them do their job well. I think we should give them that freedom to do the job. Today's youngsters in India, really great, and they have the knowledge. Today, with all this communication modes available, most of the technology flows freely in any case. A lot of information is available. Youngsters are doing a great job. I think maybe MIT should induct few startup guys into their department to look at how they work. But the point is, I think technology, everything is tackled. I think we need a mindset that we say, can-do attitude must come. And we can do it. Listen, I'm probably the oldest and I'm saying that, yes, after having gone through 50 years of very difficult industrial environment, I am saying I see a great potential for India and these changes are great and the people are with a lot of knowledge. Listen, the kind of commitment and the passion with which our employees work, you don't see in many countries. We have that big advantage. And I think policymakers and the senior industrialists should be able to tap that, make it very effective. I don't think we should have a defensive attitude saying, we have, as you said, all these years we have wasted. We have wasted. You can't put the clock back, right? Yeah. That's it, that's gone. Today we have assume that, today we are starting our thing and you'll be a great, we can build it up. Only thing is we should allow people to do it. And that's what I would feel is government job, really.
I think Mr. Goyal was saying we are fighting against time. There is a window of opportunity of maybe 5, 7, 8 years for us to capture. And we have many things to do and we need to do it. So with that, I think maybe I'll open up to the audience for any questions. So I have time up reminders as well. Yeah, I think I forgot my point on holding you from lunch. So maybe with that, thanks to Elsina and Source India for the opportunity and thanks to the panelists to join in. I learned quite a bit and enjoyed the conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to you, Sudhir, for coming all the way and joining this, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And can we hear it up with a big round of applause, everybody? And can I ask Raju sir to please present our panelists with mementos? Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand to Mr. N. Ramachandran, CMD, MEL Systems and Services and Chair Organizing Committee, Source India. Thank you, sir. Mr. Rajiv Venkatraman, the Managing Director, Precision Electronics Components Manufacturing Company. Thank you very much, sir. And finally, to our moderator for this session, with a big hand, everybody, Mr. Sudhir Narayan, partner from Bain. Gentlemen, can I request all of you to please come together for a group photograph? Thank you. We'll now break for lunch. Can we have all of you back by 2:30? And that's when we'll have a special presentation on MSME support ecosystem in Tamil Nadu by Mr. M. Srivatsan, the Zonal Regional Manager, NSIC Ministry of MSME. And post which we'll have a panel discussion on automation and domestic capital goods industry development. And ladies and gentlemen, requesting all of you to please be back before 2:30. 2:30 is when we will start the next session. Thank you.